Hi guys, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about the best Porsches out there right now in terms of best value. Now I've got options for all price brackets, so hopefully there's something in there for you. First off, let's talk about depreciation. It's a term that car enthusiasts all around the world know all too well. As soon as you buy a car, especially when it's new, it loses a hell of a lot of value as soon as you've driven it away from the dealer. Now that's not always the case, and as one Porsche main dealer once told me, there's no such thing as depreciation in Porsche land. Now that might be a bit of a stretch, but there is some truth to it. If you buy a used Cayman or 911 and run it for a few years, quite often you only lose a small amount of value, if any at all. Porsche prices, especially 911s, absolutely skyrocketed over COVID, and only in the last year and a bit have they actually started to come down and be a lot more reasonable. So with that in mind, here are what I consider to be the best options in 2024. Let's kick things off with a 911, and more specifically the 996.1 Carrera 2 with the factory aero kit. The 996 got a lot of hate when it first arrived back in the early 90s, but in the last few years it's really got a lot of admiration and a bit of love from the Porsche community, and as such prices for the 996 generally increased but still remain relatively low comparative to other 911 generations. The Carrera 2 with the factory aero kit is a prime example of one of the 996s that's riding this wave of popularity. Prices have increased over the last few years, and it's mainly down to the fact that this option wasn't ticked by many people who bought them, so levels and numbers of the cars are actually quite low. The aero kits themselves on the used market can run into the absolute thousands, so finding a complete car can be quite difficult, but if it's what you want and you're patient, if you're really lucky, you can find one or two under £20,000 and you'll easily be able to get one for around £25,000 here in the UK. This model was actually the lightest 996 ever made. It was even lighter than its track-focused brother, the GT3. The factory option code for the aero kit was XAA. This can either be found in the owner's manual or on a sticker under the bonnet. If it doesn't have either of these when you're looking at them, it's probably not an original factory optioned car. So just be mindful of that when looking, because there are a few out there where people have just stuck body kits on them and tried to flog them as genuine, which they're not. Not everyone does it, but it's just something to be mindful of. The last thing you want to do is pay a premium for what you think is a factory optioned special car, and you're just getting left with a standard 996 C2. So yeah, just be careful. I know some of the 996 pricing generally can be really tempting, but if you intend on keeping the car for a while, I'd always opt for the best possible option you can afford, because you'll hopefully eliminate most headaches that you'll get from opting with a cheap car, and it might appreciate a bit more as well. So that would be my advice in respect of those. And if that still doesn't put you off buying a cheap 911, then check out the series I did in the pop-out banner here somewhere on the 911 that I bought, and maybe that will put you off. Spoiler alert, it's not worth doing. Next up is the 981 Cayman or the Cayman S. I really don't mind which one you go for, they're both fantastic cars for the money. The 981 Cayman was only produced between 2012 and 2016, which as a production run is really short. The 981 was also the last Cayman to have the naturally aspirated flat six engine across the range, until it moved to the 718 Cayman where they all went to 2 litre turbos. There was the 4 litre GTS model that came out later, and also the GT4 which had the 4 litre, but the majority of the range only had the 2 litre turbos. Low mileage and well spec'd examples of the 981 Cayman can be had for well under £30,000 here in the UK. For an equally spec'd Cayman S, it's closer to just under £35,000. The 981 generation shares the majority of its interior with the 991 911, so given that's a 10-year-old design inside, it still stacks up to modern interiors really well. If you sit in it, you're definitely not going to feel like you're in a time capsule. Having previously owned a 981 Cayman for a number of years, I honestly don't think there's a better option out there that will get you into such a modern Porsche for such a modest price. And I know the so-called purists out there will say, oh, it's not a 911. And look, it's not, but it does 95% of what the 911 does for much cheaper. And that's not just exclusive to purchase price, that's running costs, tax, insurance, and maintenance. Probably across the board, the Cayman will be cheaper to run in every single way. I also find a lot of people who dismiss the Cayman have definitely never owned one, and not even driven one. And I know that's not the case for everybody, I'm not trying to generalise, but if you are one of those people, go try one, and then let me know what you actually think. Next up is the 911 996 Turbo, and yes, another 996. But the 996 as a whole, comparative to other generations, is such good value, and with this you're getting a flagship model at a fraction of the price. The turbo was the first 996 to get the new Metzger engine and was an incredibly fast car for its day. Because it had a different engine, it didn't suffer from the same problems that the other variants did that had the N96 engine. So when buying used, you could probably take a bit more comfort that you're not going to have the same problems. That's not to say they won't be without their own issues, but you won't have any IMS issues, which is good. Reasonable mileage examples can be had for under £35,000, which again for a flagship model is such good value, and I don't see prices going anywhere but up, if I'm honest. Next up is a firm favourite of mine and something that's definitely on my list for the future. I'm almost half tempted not to even mention this one because I don't want prices to go up any further. It is the 911 997.2 GTS. With the 0.2 generation of the 997, Porsche were able to remove all the niggles and gremlins that appeared in the 0.1 and also offered it with the brand new PDK gearbox, but it still allowed customers to get the manual, which is something you can't really say for current 911 generations. It was also the last 911 to have hydraulic steering before they moved to fully electric assisted steering. So if that's something you still yearn for, this is the great option for you. Prices for the GTS are by no means cheap given its age. For a good example, you're still going to be spending between £55,000 and £60,000. And for that price, you could easily get a 997 turbo or even a high mileage 991 turbo. So why this? Quite simply, it's special. I think someone at Porsche had a real soft spot for the 997 and they wanted to give it a good send-off. And they did this by rummaging around the factory and finding the very best parts from other cars. For example, it borrows the turbo's wide body kit and extended rear track. It utilises the 408 3.0 litre beast of an engine from the Sport Classic and even steals the centre locking wheel nuts from the GT3. It's a beautiful Frankenstein that has all the hallmarks of future Porsche Classic status, if it's not already there. Would a list like this be complete without some form of GT product from Porsche? I don't think so. So here's the 911 991.1 GT3. Now I know this might sound like an obvious choice, but there is reasoning behind this, and those are twofold: price and scarcity. Now some might not consider the 991 GT3 to be that rare of a car, but when you compare it to its younger brother, the 992 GT3, it is a rare car. On the used market, it's nearly twice as rare. Now, not only is this absolute beast of a car twice as rare as the new version, it's also considerably cheaper. To get yourself into a 992 GT3 on the used market, you'll need at least £150,000. To do that for an equivalent 991.1 GT3, you'll need just shy of 90. And I know the 991.1 has had its fair amount of issues, mainly the rod bolt problems, but most of these on the used markets will have been resolved by now, and will have Porsche's extended warranty of 15 years, so you should be able to have some comfort that those issues aren't going to be that prevalent. And if it is a worry, just make sure you go for one that is 100% sorted. If it was me, I'd go for the 991, save myself that 60k and go on some amazing trips with it. But that's just me. So there you have it, guys. Those are my top picks. Let me know in the comments below what you'd go for. If you enjoyed the video, do give it a thumbs up, and if you're not already subscribed to the channel, do give that button a little slap for me. It really does help the channel, and I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers, guys.